Welcome to episode 6. I'm your host, Danish Patel, and this is 5 for Podcasting. As always, I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who subscribed, follows the podcast on social media, who's reviewed it, rated it, left comments. All of it is greatly appreciated. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the podcast. Helps get the podcast name out there, helps move up in the ranks, um, and gets the word out there. So, uh, subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcast from: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Available on almost all podcast platforms. You can also follow the podcast on social media on Instagram and Twitter. Handles the same for both. It's going to be at 5, the number 5 for podcasting. Or you can follow myself on Twitter at avpatel730. So this week this episode, I should say, we're gonna get into part 2 of my NFL preview covering the AFC. Now, before I get started, I want to clear up a mistake I made on last week's NFC preview podcast. Had a complete brain fart. I totally forgot that Darius Geis was actually cut by the Redskins. Um, like I said, total brain fart. I apologize for that mistake. Like I mentioned before, though, I'm not a professional analyst, not a professional podcaster by any means. So mistakes are going to happen. Shit's going to happen. What else can I say about that? So hopefully this week, though, I won't make any glaring mistakes. If I do, please do let me know in through social media or in the comments, whatnot. So let's go ahead and get right into it. First division I want to talk about in the AFC is the AFC East. Now, this division is probably the most intriguing. Tom Brady is no longer there, so this is the first time in 20 years. I'd say this division is wide open. For the longest time, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady had a stranglehold, and you kind of knew that the Patriots would win every year. Even the year Tom Brady got hurt and Matt Castle was in there, Belichick still had that team ready to play, and they ended up winning 11 games. They didn't make the playoffs that year, but you knew that they were gonna compete, and I expect no different this year. So let's go and start with the Patriots. Since we're talking about them, the Patriots, like I said, they lost Tom Brady. Gronk retired a couple years ago. A lot of their players opted out due to coronavirus. Big name players like Patrick Chung, Dante Hightower. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fill in those gaps. They also brought in Cam Newton, which was very intriguing. It's going to be interesting to see which Cam Newton are the Patriots going to get. Are they going to get pre-injury Cam Newton from 2017, 2018, or are they going to get a Cam Newton that's not quite fully healed and just never gets back to his old self? It'll be interesting to see. Regardless, one thing I do know is that Belichick is going to have him prepared. Belichick is going to create a scheme specifically designed for Cam, and Belichick is going to have that team ready to play. A lot of people are saying the Patriots are probably going to try to tank for Trevor Lawrence next year or Justin Fields. So I don't see that happening at all. From what I've seen from Bill Belichick, you think the first year after Tom Brady leaves the Patriots, he's going to roll over to a 6 or 7 win season and let Tom Brady potentially win the NFC South? Hell no. Belichick has too much pride for that. That team has too much pride for that. He's going to have them ready to compete, and he's going to have them compete. He's going to have them battling for that division title. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Now, Vegas has the Patriots over/under set at 9.5 wins. So looking at their schedule, obviously they get the Bills, Jets, Dolphins twice each. They got the Chiefs this year. That's going to be tough. They got the NFC West this year. That's going to be really tough with the Niners, Seahawks, Cardinals, and Rams. They got the Ravens on their schedule. They got the Texans on their schedule. It's going to be rough. It's going to be a rough season for them. But again, Bill Belichick always has that team ready to compete. I like the over, actually. I think they're going to get to 10 wins, if not 11. I think 11's kind of their ceiling. in my opinion, looking at their schedule. They're going to get some of these teams potentially at a good time. You know, depending on how coronavirus and all that plays out, obviously, how it's going to affect teams and if players get infected and whatnot. Um, a lot of the tough games are kind of in the middle of the season there, so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. So I like the over there. Like I said, 11 I think is the ceiling for them. 10 I think is realistic, so I would take the over 9.5 for the Patriots. The next team I want to talk about is the Bills. Bills are another intriguing team. Uh, Josh Allen is an exciting young quarterback. He can make plays with his feet. He can make plays with his arm. Um, they got Devin Singletary at running back, who kind of showed that he was making some good waves and progress last year. They picked up Stephon Diggs in the offseason. That defense is always a pretty decent defense, pretty good defense. So they're always going to keep them in the game. And now that the Bills don't have the pressure of looking up to Tom Brady and Bill Belichick every year, I think they can play a little more free this year, along with the Jets and Dolphins. They're not going to have as much pressure going up against the Patriots. And even last year, it didn't seem like they were ever scared to play the Patriots. It didn't seem like they were too afraid of that stage to go up against the Patriots last year. So to me, I think the Bills are probably the best bet to dethrone the Patriots in this division. Like I said, they have a pretty good team. Now that they picked up Stephon Diggs, that's just going to add to that offense that Josh Allen already had clicking towards the end of last year. So it'll be fun to see how they do. The Bills over under, they are, let's see here. The Bills are set at 9 wins. So just a little bit short of the Patriots there. Looking at their schedule, again, very similar schedule. NFC West, they get the division twice each. The difference for them is they don't have the Ravens and they don't have the Chiefs. So that I think can only prove well for them. So I think they're gonna hit the over. Again, I think 10, 10 or 11 wins is probably realistic looking at their schedule. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, you know what? Looking at their schedule, I did miss it. They do have the Chiefs. So 10 wins I do think though is still reasonable for them. Nine setting that over under at 9 is probably realistic. So we'll see how that goes. I would probably take the over. A lot of people probably stay away from it, but I'd probably take the over on their wins. I can see them getting to that, especially with the team that they have around Josh Allen this year. Now let's move on to the Jets. Jets are an interesting one. They've had a lot of turmoil, I guess you can say, in the offseason. They traded Jamal Adams away to the Seahawks. They they drafted a first round left tackle out of Louisville, Mekhi Becton. So they're hoping high hopes for him. They're hoping they can keep Sam Darnold off the ground as much as possible. Um, I think the Jets are hoping that Le'Veon Bell can really kind of come into his own again in the second season with them. Jets are a tricky one. It'll be interesting to see what that team does to compete in this division. They've always kind of been that team that kind of lingers around. They're competitive in some games, but they haven't really been able to kind of make that extra push to push them over the edge. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Adam Gase, offensively, he can create schemes and do things like that. I haven't really seen it too much with the Jets, though. He has Sam Darnold. He's a good young quarterback. I think he's pretty talented. It's just he just hasn't had a good scheme around him yet, and I don't know if that's on Adam Gase, if that's on he's trying to think too much about it. I don't know what it is, but this team could have the potential to compete every year. They just seem to fall flat every year. So I don't know what it is. Um, looking at their over under, um, their over under is set at 7 wins. Now, again, tough schedule. They have They have the Chiefs. They got the NFC West as well. It looks like actually this division looks like they play the AFC West. So every team in this division has them. They got the Colts, who have some high hopes with them this year. We'll talk about them a little bit later. They got the Browns, who are hoping to kind of bounce back. So 7 wins. I don't know. I probably stay away from it. 7 wins seems about right. I can see them going either or. I'd probably stay away. I can see them. I can see them winning 5 games. I can see them winning 9 games. So it just kind of depends how Le'Veon Bell performs, if Sam Darnold could stay healthy, and how that defense holds up. I think that's what it's going to come down to for the Jets, really. And the last team I want to talk about, um, in this division is the Dolphins. Um, Dolphins are intriguing. They they were expected to just roll over last year, and Brian Flores actually has his team competing. I don't know what it is. I think it's the culture that Flores instills. Um, he was a part of the Patriots culture for a while. He knows what a winning culture looks like. He knows how to turn the corner. He knows what type of attitude to bring into the locker room. I think with the Dolphins, they were so used to losing for so many seasons that bringing a guy in like Brian Flores, uh, you know, is a attitude booster. It when the team sees how he carries himself in the locker room, it's something going to rub off on them. So, I think Miami benefits from having him as his coach. Now, with that being said, I don't think they're going to be relevant in this division this year. They made some good moves last year. They had some pretty big wins last year. Um, they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's always one of those quarterbacks who, in my opinion, is good for about 6 to 7 games. You know, who can win you those 6 or 7 games, but after that, you don't know what you're going to get from him. Um, they also drafted Tua out of Alabama. He's had those injuries, so we'll see how he bounces back from those injuries. It'll be interesting to see when he actually takes over in Miami. We know it's going to happen. We know it's a matter of time. So if Ryan Fitzpatrick, if he gets off to a hot start, first 4 or 5 games, he's got the team at 4-1 or 3-2, and then kind of cools off after that, and they start getting on a little bit of a losing streak. I can see Tua coming in there. I don't think he's going to start the season though, even if he is healthy. I don't think he's going to start the season. Doesn't seem realistic. They also picked up Josh Howard in the offseason, a running back that or sorry, not Josh Howard, Jordan Howard. Um, he's a running back that I have always liked. When he was in Chicago and then Philly, he was always one of those running backs that would never lose yards. He always seemed to get positive yardage. And as a running back, that's all you can ask for. I don't want a guy who's going to hit the line and then run backwards 5 yards and get tackled and lose, 3 yards on the play. I want a guy who's going to fall forward, a guy who's going to push the chains, and that's exactly what he's going to do. So that'll be fun to see how he does in there. Now, Vegas has their over under set at 6 wins. Again, that seems about right, especially considering last year, how they played last year. You know, 6 wins, even with Tua, even with, Fitzmagic. I'm gonna stay away from that. I think they're probably gonna hit the under. I probably wouldn't bet on it though. But most likely looking at their schedule, they're probably gonna go under. Um, I'm thinking 5 wins is probably realistic for them. 7's probably their ceiling, but 5 is probably realistic to where they looking at their schedule and how everything kind of falls there. Because they got the Seahawks, 49ers, and then Broncos in back-to-back weeks. So if they get on a little losing streak right there, that can really kind of shift their momentum. So, like I said, I personally would stay away, but if I had to bet on it, I'd probably bet the under. Now, in terms of who's going to win this division, I think it comes down to 2 teams. I think it's the Patriots and Bills. Jets, they'll probably be competitive in games. They'll probably, make the Patriots and Bills work a little bit. But in the end, I don't think they're gonna be that third team that competes with them. I think it's gonna be the Patriots and Bills. And for me, it's gonna come down to one thing. how Cam Newton performs. If he can perform to a level, not even necessarily his 2015 Cam Newton level, but even just 2017 Cam Newton level, where he's making smart plays, where he's making plays with his feet when he has to, not primarily, but when he has to, and he's making good throws. If the Patriots get that Cam Newton, I like the Patriots to win this division. Um, but if they don't get that Cam Newton, if they get a Cam Newton who's not fully healthy, who never bounced back from that injury last year, I think it's the Bills. The Bills, regardless of how the Patriots play, they're still gonna do their thing. So it's all gonna come down to Cam. Like I said, if he plays well, take the Patriots. Um, if not, I would take the Bills. Um, but I guess if I had to give you a clear choice, I'd go with the Patriots. I think Bill Belichick will, even if Cam Newton isn't fully healthy or not the same Cam Newton, I think he's going to design schemes around Cam Newton to help him flourish in that system. So, I'm going to take the Patriots there. So, moving on to the AFC West. This is a fun division. You got the Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champions. You've got the Las Vegas Raiders, first year in Vegas. Sucks for them that it's during COVID because I think that would have been a great season for them, their inaugural season in Las Vegas. For the Raiders. They got, you have the Chargers who, we'll see how that turns out for them. They lost Phillip Rivers, but they have a good defense. They got some good weapons on offense, so we'll see how that goes. And then you got the Broncos. Broncos, again, one of those teams kind of like the Chargers. They're always, or the Jets, like I talked about in the previous division. They're kind of always competitive, They may not always be relevant in division winning talks, but they're always competitive in each game. So it'll be interesting to see. So let's go and start off talking about the Super Bowl champs, the Chiefs. They signed Patrick Mahomes to an extension. They signed Travis Kelce to an extension. They still got Tyreek Hill. They have the rookie Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who they're really hoping who's gonna be the next guy up at running back. And again, they're just loaded, top to bottom, offense, defense. They're honestly too good. As a Titans fan, I watched them in the AFC Championship game last year, and there were times where you couldn't. I mean, the team just couldn't do anything to stop them, and that's partly because of their speed. That's partly because of Mahomes' playmaking ability to escape the pocket and create plays with his feet. That's partly because of the overall talent and the number of weapons they have on offense. It's a mixture of everything, and it's just too much for teams to handle. We saw it with the Niners in the Super Bowl. Niners had probably the best defense last year, and that offense of the Chiefs just continued to wear them down over and over again each drive, and it caught up to them. I expect the Chiefs to defend their title. I expect them to be just as good as last year. I know usually what happens when a quarterback or a player signs a big contract, they seem to fall off a little bit statistically. I don't see that from Mahomes. He's still young. He's driven. He's hungry. I think he wants to be the next great dynasty in the NFL. And I think, him and his teammates are going to be out to prove that. So their over-under is set at 11.5. And that's a good over-under, I think, for them. They have the AFC East on their schedule. They have the NFC South on their schedule. They play the Ravens this year. They play the Texans this year. So they have a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong. But again, I've seen enough of this Chiefs team last year to know that I don't care who's going up against them. Hence, against the Texans in the playoffs where they were down 24-0. They're always in the game until that clock hits 00 on time. I do not trust the other team against the Chiefs. I'm going to take the Chiefs every time. So I like the over. I think their ceiling is 13 wins. I think realistically, they're probably going to get to 12. But 13 is probably their ceiling. So I would take the over there. Now, moving on to the Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders. John Gruden, pretty impressed with his first year as head coach. He he got that team to compete. He got that team to really rally around him. He made some good moves in the draft this year. They got Henry Ruggs on offense to help kind of bolster that speed on offense. They got Brian Edwards from South Carolina, Lynn Bowden Jr. from Kentucky. So they got a bunch of key players in the draft last year that could really help contribute to this offense. The question with the offense is going to be: is Derek Carr the guy that's going to lead him? Derek Carr, he's had a good season. We've seen what he can do when he's got the weapons and he's healthy. They brought in Marcus Mariota in the offseason. I think that's a good pickup for them. He's a veteran quarterback. He's smart. He's gonna help push Derek Carr. And he's gonna be ready to play. In case Derek Carr gets hurt, he's gonna be ready to play. I think it's gonna be a situation similar to Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee last year, where he just kind of came in, wasn't expecting to be the starter, but got thrown into the ring there, and made the most of his opportunity. So we'll see if that happens or not. I think if Derek Carr stays healthy, though, with the weapons that they put around him now, they got Darren Waller, they got Josh Jacobs at running back, with Henry Ruggs. They got some good weapons there. So I like that team. It'll be fun to watch them this year, and especially compete in that division. So um, it'll be interesting to see how things play out there. Their over under set at 7.5. Um, Again, similar schedule. Got the NFC South, AFC East. Um, you know, this is a tough one. 7.5. Seems about right. And I think it's personally a little bit low. I think I really personally like the moves that they made in the draft in the offseason. I think they can get to 9 wins. It's a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of the schedule is kind of predicated on how some of these teams are going to do. Like they have the Buccaneers and the Falcons and the Panthers, but all those teams, Panthers and Bucks especially, have new personnel. So we'll see how that plays out. Falcons are kind of hit or miss. So we'll see how that plays out. So it'll be interesting. Chiefs, obviously, that's going to be a tough one. They got to play them twice. But they also get the Broncos and Chargers twice as well. So I think 9 is realistic for them. I think their ceiling, they could win 10. But I think 8 or 9 is probably realistic. So if I had to bet, I'd probably take the over. And we'll see how that plays out. But I like the over there. I like this team personally. Next team is the Chargers. Um, Chargers, they drafted rookie Justin Herbert. They have Tyrod Taylor. They lost obviously mainstay Philip Rivers in the offseason. He went to the Colts. So, that kind of hurts them. It's going to be interesting to see what they do at quarterback now. If they're going to go with Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert. Um, both players are serviceable. Tyrod Taylor, I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to necessarily win games for you, but he's not going to necessarily lose games for you either. I think he's a game manager at best who can make certain plays when he absolutely needs to, but I don't think he's going to be a game changer. And I think that's what they're hoping Justin Herbert's going to be. I think they're hoping Justin Herbert is going to be a game changer. I watched a few games of his at Oregon. I didn't see too much of game changing ability. He made smart throws. He made good throws. He was accurate, but there was nothing that really wowed me. So we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. They have a great defense. They got Joey Bosa, Durbin Jackson. They got a lot of great players on defense there. Um, I like that defense to keep them in games. But if their offense is not moving the chains, and that defense has to be out there for multiple, for multiple drives in a quarter, that's not going to bode well for them. So we'll see how that defense holds up overall. Their over under also set at 7.5. So I'm gonna go with the under here. I think their ceiling is probably 7. Realistically, I'm thinking 5 games. The question at quarterback is the main thing here. I know they have a lot of offensive weapons. They got Keenan Allen, they got Mike Williams, they got Austin Eckler. But we'll see how that quarterback situation plays out. If it's Tyrod Taylor, I think they can get to 7 wins. If it's Justin Herbert, there's always going to be some rookie bumps in the road. I think 5, 6 wins is probably best with Justin Herbert at the helm. So we'll see. Like I said, that defense though is good enough to keep him in games. So it's all going to be predicated on how this offense does at the end of the day. Now, the last team I wanted to talk about was the Denver Broncos in this division. Now, Denver Broncos are interesting. They they have Drew Lock at quarterback now, which I'm pretty sure is going to be he's their go-to guy now. I think they've committed to Drew Lock. They kind of showed that by their draft this year by drafting Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama, and they draft KJ Hamler out of Penn State. They already had Cortland Sutton, who was pretty decent last year. They had Noah Fant at tight end, who made some big plays at times. So it's going to be fun to see how they perform on offense. One thing that did help them, I think, in the offseason was signing Melvin Gordon as well. You know, um, him with Philip Lindsay there, I think is going to be a good 1-2 punch in the backfield. So that defense, as always, again, like the Chargers, they have a defense that's going to be able to keep you in games. Von Miller is an absolute monster. Um, he's still going to go out and perform each game. He's going to hype that team up and keep them in games. Again, it's going to come down to the offense and how Drew Lock manages that offense. If they're consistently going out there and having 3 and outs or getting one first down to drive and then getting off the field, it's going to put much more pressure on that defense, and it's going to put a bunch of tired legs out there on defense, and that's just going to prove non-beneficial for them at the end of the day. Now, Denver, their over under is at 8 wins. Um, I think that's the perfect over under. I think 8 wins is probably what they're going to end up at. I'm probably going to stay with this. I think it's going to be a push. They got the Titans. They got the NFC South. They got the AFC East. It's going to be a tough one. I think 8 wins is realistic, especially with that defense. If that offense gets clicking, if Drew Lock gets that offense clicking, um, 8 wins seems about right for their ceiling. So I like that. I like that win total that Vegas has set. So I'm going to stay away from that. I think that's the perfect win total. That's probably going to be a push. Now, in terms of who's going to win this division, this is a no-brainer. It's the Chiefs. Okay, I'm not even going to waste too much time on this because it's the Chiefs division to lose. It's honestly the Chiefs league to lose, to be honest. But the other three teams, I think all three of them have the capability of fighting for a wild card spot. So we'll see how that plays out. And I know they can definitely try to keep games competitive against the Chiefs. So if they can make them sweat a little bit, that's only going to prove beneficial for their own teams moving forward. So far, we did the AFC East, got the Patriots winning that division, and then the AFC West got the Chiefs winning that division. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll get into the last two divisions in the AFC. We got the AFC North and the AFC South. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, so let's get back into the AFC previews. Now we're going to move on to the AFC North. Interesting division here. You had the Ravens kind of run away with it last year. We got a lot of teams in this division that got healthy in the offseason, drafted some major prospects in the offseason, made some moves in the offseason. Steelers are getting Roethlisberger back. Bengals drafted Joe Burrow. The Browns, they got a new coach, so we'll see how that proves for Baker Mayfield and the group out there. But again, this is the Ravens division to lose, I think. Starting with the Ravens, they have everybody back. They're just as strong as they were last year. One big thing, they released Earl Thomas, which is kind of big news. So we'll see how that affects their defense. But on offense, I expect them to be just as potent as they were last year. One thing that I think will be interesting to see is if if opponents of the Ravens will model what the Titans did to them in the playoffs and use that to stop Lamar Jackson. I think the Titans had a pretty good big game plan against him in the playoffs. The key for them was um, to contain Lamar Jackson, let him beat you with his throw, and to not let the run beat you. By taking away the run, it made Lamar Jackson have to rely on his throwing abilities a little bit more. And not just that, but the Titans were able to jump on them early. So if teams are able to score on the Ravens quick and get a lead, that's going to force the Ravens to abandon the run, which is their bread and butter, which what gets that offense going. Without the running game and that option that they run with Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and those guys, if they can't go to that, that's going to make their offense one dimensional and a lot easier to defend against. So it'll be interesting to see how teams are able to defend against that. Now, just like the Chiefs, their over under is set at 11 and a half. 11 and a half, I think I'm going to go with the under here. I think their ceiling is actually 11. Um, they got this division has the NFC East. They have the AFC South. And then the Ravens, they do play the Chiefs this year. So that'll be interesting to see that matchup. But I think their ceiling is 11 wins here. So I'm going to take the under here. I think realistically, they'll probably get to 10. But ceiling for me, looking at this schedule, is 11. Now, moving on to the Steelers. Steelers are getting Ben Roethlisberger back. How effective is he going to be? That's going to be the question. He's 38 years old, coming off of an injury. They just signed Eric Ebron. They have James Conner. They've got Juju Smith-Schuster. They got a lot of their weapons on offense still there. That defense is still solid. They got TJ Watt, who has been unbelievable since coming to the Steelers. The question with Big Ben is that year off last year with the injuries, was it good enough to help rejuvenate his body to get back to a form where he can play at a high level? We'll see. Now, I'm saying that, but in all reality, Big Ben just a couple years ago threw 5,000 yards. So we'll see what happens there. But a full year off due to injury could go either way for a player of his age. So it'll be interesting to see how that all turns out. Worst case for them is if Big Ben gets hurt again, they don't really have a backup plan. They don't really have an option at QB to help fill in for that role. Last year Tomlin did have them competitive after Roethlisberger went down, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't enough. And I think that'll probably be the same case this year if it gets to that point. Now, their over/under is set at 9.5. I'm probably gonna stay away from this one. I think 9.5 seems realistic. I think their ceiling, is also 11 wins, especially if Big Ben stays healthy and plays at a high level. Realistically, I think they'll probably get to 9 wins. But again, it's one of those things where it's all predicated on how Big Ben's going to play. If he can stay healthy, if he can play effectively. That's what it's going to come down to. And this too many question marks for me to actually put a bet on this, on the over-under. So, like I said, ceiling for them, if Big Ben's healthy, 11 to 12 wins. But realistically, looking how the progression of that team has been, I'm going to say 9 wins. So I think 9.5 is set about right for them. Now, the next team is the Cleveland Browns. Now, this team is interesting. Last year, a lot of analysts out there, were high on the Browns, as was I. I really like the moves they made last season. In the offseason, I should say. I thought last season they were gonna be ready to show up. I thought Baker Mayfield was gonna take a next step. I thought Odell Beckham was gonna be a monster, and I, along with a lot of people, were wrong on all those counts, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back this year from all that. Nick Chubb, probably one of the best running backs in the league. underrated in my opinion. I think he doesn't get a lot of respect as some of the other running backs. And I guess that's partially because it's only, this will really only be his second full year starting. Uh, but for me, he's shown enough in the since he's been there that he can be an elite running back. And I think personally, he should be in that conversation with that top tier of running backs. Um, Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, those guys are monsters. When they're playing on their game, they should be unguardable. But for some reason, for them, especially Odell more than Jarvis, I think it seems more of like a motivation thing for him. From what I've seen from the outside looking in, it just looks like he's not always connected to the game. You know, and it's gonna be interesting to see if he can kind of get himself remotivated to get back in there and play at a high level. Um, and obviously that defense, again, that defense is pretty solid. I wouldn't say anything great, but they're definitely a solid defense that's not going to give up 30, 40 points necessarily. It's a bend, don't break type defense. So, you know, Cleveland's over under um, for this season is set at 8 wins. Um, that's a solid over under. I think personally, I think that's a little low. I think they can actually get to 9 wins. I think nine is probably their ceiling, and I think that's what they'll hit is their ceiling is 9 wins. Um, so it'll be interesting to see. They had the new coach. It'll be fun to see if he can really develop a game plan for that offense to really make them potent and one of the most dangerous offenses in the league because they have a potential to be if they're clicking. So we'll see how that goes. The last team here is the Bengals. Now, Bengals are interesting. They're going to get AJ Green back. They just drafted Joe Burrow. Um, Zach Taylor, the coach of the Bengals, had a rough first year, but we'll see if he can turn that around with the quarterback of his choice, with a healthy receiving core. It'll be fun to see. Um, the knock with the Bengals is that I don't think their defense is very good. And in this division where the offenses are pretty potent, that's going to be tough for the Bengals to hang. They're going to rely on Joe Burrow to make a lot of plays to come back for them. They're going to rely on that offense. I think a lot of there's going to be a heavy load on that offense, and I don't think that the Bengals are ready for that necessarily. Their over under is set at 5.5. I'm going to take the under on that. I don't think the Bengals are ready by any means. I think 5 is probably their ceiling. I think they're probably going to win 4 games. AJ Green, I know he's healthy now, but we'll see as the season goes on. He's been prone to injuries the last couple years, so it's something that I don't necessarily trust with him to be out there and stay healthy. Joe Burrow, I think he's going to have some rookie headaches. If any rookie quarterback out of this draft has an opportunity to overcome those quick, it is Joe Burrow. But again, this defense with those, or sorry, this division with those offenses in this division, that defense is going to have to be a lot better than what they have been, and I just don't see it. So I'm going to take the under for the win totals for the Bengals. Now, in terms of who's going to win this division, again, it's on paper it's a 2-team race. Has the potential to be a 3-team race if the Browns can, develop a good game plan for that offense. But it's going to come down to the Steelers and Ravens, in my opinion. And even with a healthy Ben Roethlisberger and an effective Ben Roethlisberger, I still think the Ravens are too potent offensively um, to not win this division. So I'm going to take the Ravens here, just a slight edge. I think they're only going to beat out the Steelers by a game. So it's the Ravens division to lose, just like it's the Chiefs division to lose in the West. It's the Ravens division to lose in the North. So it'll be fun to watch. So last but not least, going to the AFC South. Now this is my division in terms of fandom because I'm a big Titans fan. So I pay close attention to this division. This is a weird one. I mean, the AFC South the past few years has been a weird division. I never really know who's gonna step up and make the playoffs or win the division. So it's always interesting to see. Um, I'm gonna start off with talking about the Colts first, because they probably made the most offseason moves with Philip Rivers. Um, you know, had some good job finding some receiving gems like Michael Pittman Jr. and Paris Campbell. Um, those are good. They're not big name receivers. They're not household name receivers, but they're going to be receivers that are going to be able to contribute to that team. And when you put those guys alongside T.Y. Hilton, obviously, obviously that team's going to compete. Now, Philip Rivers, that's where the biggest question mark is. Is he going to be able to be the gunslinger he was with the Chargers? Who knows? Um, I think defenses in the AFC South are a little bit better than the defenses he faced in the AFC West. Maybe not Denver, and obviously the Chargers. He was on that team, but I think the defenses for the most part are better than the Chiefs and the Raiders. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that and the pressure that comes from that. Now, obviously, they got Marlon Mack, who's going to be able to take a lot of pressure off of Philip Rivers, especially in the first few games while he gets his feet wet. Marlon Mack, he's awesome. He's really really good. I thought he was just going to be kind of a one hit wonder from that one good year he had a couple years ago, but he's been proven to be consistent and put up numbers. So I like him. I like that he's going to take some pressure off of Philip Rivers to help get him acclimated a little bit more. And then for them, the defense, that defense uh, is pretty good actually. I think the Colts have one of the better defenses in the AFC. I think they're a little bit underrated. They do a good job on the pass rush for opposing quarterbacks, and especially in this division when you have to go up against Deshaun Watson. Um, you know, Having a good pass rush is only going to help you in the long run. Now, the Colts, their win total that Vegas has for over under is 9 wins. Um, the Colts the Colts I think are one of the better teams in the division. Looking at their schedule, the AFC South, they have the NFC North, so that's the Bears, Vikings, Lions, and Packers. And it looks like they have the the AFC North as well. So the Bengals, Browns, Steelers, Ravens. So, you know, 9 wins. I actually like the over on that. Like I said, I think the Colts are one of the better teams in this division. I think they're going to get to 10 wins. I think that's their ceiling, and I think that's what they're going to hit is their ceiling. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Now, the next team I want to talk about is the Titans. This is my team. Now they made a deep run last year, made to the AFC Championship. A lot of that was on the back of Derrick Henry. He did just sign a contract, 4-year contract extension, a 4-year, $50 million extension. I actually like that deal. I don't think it was breaking the bank by any means. I think it allows the Titans some flexibility to bring in some more players in the future. They were also able to lock up Ryan Tannehill long term. Now, I know with Ryan Tannehill, a lot of people were saying, why pay Tannehill that much money when he only had one good year? Well, for me, the way I see it is quarterbacks are probably one of the hardest positions to come by a good quarterback and a solid quarterback that's going to go out there and perform every week. Biggest question with Tannehill has been staying healthy. In Miami, that was his struggle. He was never able to stay healthy, and he was always injured. When he was out there, he put up big numbers. He played it well. That I don't think for me at least, there was never a knock on his ability to play. It was his ability to stay healthy. So I think the way he performed this past year, where he led the Titans to, I know again, a lot of that was Derrick Henry, but he was part of that as well. They made that run after he came in midway through the season. I think you have to pay him. There is no other options out there. What other options are out there? You tell me. And for the Titans, trust me, I know they've been looking for franchise quarterbacks ever since Steve McNair left. So, for me, they had to pay him. I mean, I'd rather roll the dice on him, know what you're going to get from him as long as he stays healthy, and go from there. They have a good team around him. Derrick Henry, obviously a monster. He's a complete beast. His biggest question with Derrick Henry is how is he going to be able to carry that workload going into this season after he's done it for a full season last year. They also have A.J. Brown, one of the best rookies last year in the league. My opinion, probably should have won Rookie of the Year, but that's just me being biased. So I'm not even gonna lie about that. 1,000 yards receiving. Um, Great playmaker. Goes up, gets the ball at the highest point. Perfect for what Tannehill can do and where Tannehill can get him the ball. They have Corey Davis, who's been kind of hit or miss. We'll see how he does with the full year under Tannehill. They also have Adam Humphries, who will be healthy and ready to go in the slot. They have some other speedsters like Khalif Raymond. Tight end. They got Jonnu Smith, who's a big physical tight end. So they have a lot of good weapons on offense. Again, the biggest question for them is going to be how Tannehill holds up. You know what? Everybody else is going to perform. But how is Tannehill going to hold up? If he can stay healthy, this team's ceiling is pretty high in my opinion. If he gets hurt and we got to rely on some of these backup QBs, that's where it gets a little dicey. And as always on defense, the Titans have a solid defense. They were able to bring back almost everybody. I know they traded away Jarrell Casey in the offseason. That's mainly because Jonathan Simmons, their draft pick from last year, is healthy and coming back this year, and they've got some big hopes for him. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out for the Titans. Now their over under set at 8.5. Again, I might be a little biased on this pick. I'm sure I am, but I'm gonna go the over on here. If Tannehill stays healthy and if Derrick Henry performs like he did last year, I think the ceiling for this team is 11 wins. I think 10 wins is realistic though. The past few years they've been kind of in that 8-8, 9-7 range. I think now though with Tannehill at full season, you got a legitimate number one receiver in AJ Brown. Derrick Henry has finally figured it out at the running back position. So I think 10 wins realistic, 11 wins is their ceiling. All dependent on Tannehill's health, obviously. Now, moving on to the Texans. Texans are an interesting team. They've got probably the best quarterback in the division, in my opinion, with Deshaun Watson. They have a pretty good defense. They have some. Well, I should say they had some good weapons on offense until they traded away DeAndre Hopkins, which was one of those moves that kind of baffled me when it happens. I still don't understand why they did it, trading DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson. I know a lot of people like David Johnson. A lot of people think he's going to bounce back, but when you have a playmaker like DeAndre Hopkins, who has shown that he can put up numbers regardless of who's throwing him the ball, you got to keep that guy. I don't care who you are. I think Bill O'Brien is personally, I think he's a little incompetent as a GM and coach. I think he should just stick with coaching. The fact they let him do the GM and coach double duty is dumb. And the Texans, they had an opportunity. If they would have kept that team together, this could have been their division. I mean, the Texans are always that one team that's been scary, especially for me as a Titans fan. Colts, obviously the Titans don't have a good record against the Colts, but they're not necessarily going to make a lot of noise, especially the last few years. They haven't made a lot of noise in terms of contending for the playoffs. The Texans have, though. Deshaun Watson, one of the best young quarterbacks in the league right now. Like I said, best quarterback in the AFC South, in my opinion. So if they just would have kept him, that team would have been scary, man. I mean, as good as some of these secondaries are in the AFC South, DeAndre Hopkins still really runs rampant on him. They can't stop him, and not many defenses can. So I think that was a big blow for them. And it's going to be interesting to see how Will Fuller kind of slides into that number one role, because I know they brought in Brandon Cooks, but I don't think Brandon Cooks is going to be that number one guy. I think that's going to be Will Fuller's role. With him, it's again with Fuller when he's out there, he's awesome. He plays great, puts up big numbers. I don't know how much of that was necessarily predicated because DeAndre Hopkins was on the other side, but we'll find out this year, and it'll be interesting because Fuller also one of those guys that has health issues. He can never seem to stay healthy, so we'll see how that plays out. Now, Texans, Texas over under win total set by Vegas is 7.5. 7.5, that's a tough one for me. I'd probably stay away from that. I think I can see this team winning 7 games. I can see this team winning 8 games. so I can see it going either way. I can also see, because of the type of player Deshaun Watson is, just carrying this team on his back and getting them to double-digit wins. I don't think that's a realistic option though, but I can see that happening. Um, so I'll probably stay away from the over/under win total on this. Like I said, it could really go either way, 7 wins or 8 wins. It just really depends how that receiving core plays. If they can somehow collectively make up the numbers lost by DeAndre Hopkins, they'll be right in there. But I don't know. I just don't see it happening right now. So we'll see. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the Jaguars. You know what? I'm not going to waste too much time talking about the Jaguars because I think they're horrible. I don't think they're a good team at all. Um, it seems that their run to the AFC Championship a few years ago seems to be a fluke. Since then, Jalen Ramsey's gone. They lost another couple of other key players um, on defense there as well. Gardner Minshew is now their starting QB. They don't have Allen Robinson anymore. They do have Leonard Fournette though. We'll see. I know I've heard some rumors about him possibly wanting out after next year, so we'll see how that all plays out. Um, they drafted a wide receiver out of Colorado, Laviska Shenault. So a lot of people are saying, he was a second round bargain. He had the potential of going in the first round, and the fact that they were able to get him in the second round was a bit of a steal for them. So we'll see if he can turn out to be a first round talent. That's only going to help Gardner Minshew even more. I think with the Jaguars, they're probably going to rely a lot on Leonard Fournette to kind of carry this offense, and I think that's going to be a lot on him. He's kind of he's already got a lot of miles on his legs being on this team since he's been drafted by them. So we'll see how that's going to play out for them this year. Defensively, a lot of dysfunction on there. You hear a lot of grumblings about players on defense not wanting to be there, players wanting to be traded, players wanting to be released. It's a complete shit show on defense for them. Now, the players they have on defense are really good players, so if they can somehow get it together and just play while they're there, we'll see. They have a pretty solid defense, so we'll see how that goes. Now, their over/under is set at 4.5, and I'm gonna go under here. I don't think this team's gonna be very good. I don't think this team's gonna win more than 3 games. Looking at their schedule, I struggle even getting to 3 wins, maybe, but 3 is probably their ceiling. I think that's just where it's gonna be. So now, in terms of who's gonna win this division, the other 3 teams in this division outside of Jacksonville all have a chance to win this division, in my opinion. This is one of those divisions every year is just kind of wide open. You never know what's going to happen with it. You never know who's going to come out on top with it. So it's just one of those things. I like the Titans. I think with the run they made last year to the AFC Championship, they brought everybody back. They've got everybody signed. There's no pressure from people holding out potentially. There's no pressure for trying to get contracts done during the season. The only goal for this team is to play and win games. I do think it's gonna, at the end of the day, it's gonna come down to them and the Colts. I think they'll actually both end up tying. I think they'll both win 10 games, but I think the Titans will win on tiebreakers. That's probably just me being a little biased, but that also is part of me not fully trusting Philip Rivers in a new system. So it's all going to be predicated on that. I think, like I said, if the Titans continue to play like they did last year, I think they'll win the division. No problem. So that wraps up the NFL preview, part 2, the AFC. Hope you guys enjoyed both part 1 and part 2. As always, thank you for listening. Be sure to follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram, at 5, the number 5 for podcasting is the Twitter and Instagram handle. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, you can also email the podcast. The email is 5forpodcasting@gmail.com. That's 5 spelled out for podcasting @gmail.com. You can also follow me personally on Twitter at avpatel730. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Get the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, almost available on pretty much most podcast platforms. So be sure to subscribe, rate us, follow us, review us, all the good stuff. Next week, hoping to do another 2 episodes next week. Hoping to do the normal episode on Wednesday, and then hoping to do a fantasy football preview next Friday. If anything changes with that, obviously I'll mention it on Wednesday's show, but that's the plan as of right now. So be sure to follow us so you don't miss out on that. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you Wednesday.